Hey, happy Monday, everybody. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Welcome to the CCS Weekly Podcast. My name is Isaiah Babcock, and I'm the college and singles minister at Cross City Church in Euless, Texas. In this week's episode, I get to sit down with Pam Hill, our women's minister at Cross City Church, to talk about the lessons that she's learned from over 20 years of ministry. Pam opens up about the good times and the not-so-good times, what the holiday season was like after losing her mother, and why event planning is something that she just loves. If you're new to our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us. We post new episodes every week, and we would love to hear your feedback as we continue to shape what this podcast is going to look like in the future. Thanks again for listening. Have a blessed week. And now on to the episode. I'm extremely happy to have Pam Hill, our women's minister on staff at Cross City, here with us today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. How long have you been here on staff?
22 years.
22 years. Mm-hmm. Now, we joked about this the other day because we found an old org chart. You've pretty much done everything here at the church, it seems like.
I've done a lot.
Okay.
But I've worked for everybody at one time or another. I keep getting moved around, so it's kind of become a joke.
So the next thing is just you being the leader of the church.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think John's going to allow that to happen.
I think we could get enough people. No, I'm just kidding. No, that would be awesome. But hey, yeah, you've been here for a while, and I say it, not jokingly, like seriously, probably one of my favorite people here at the church. If you try to find me in my office and I'm not there, I'm probably in Pam's office, just pouring out my heart, trying to get advice. And if you had a couch, I'd probably be curled up on it. But you really are one of my favorite people here at the church.
Thank you.
There's just a way. I was talking to Melissa actually about it. What is it? Because you and Melissa are related, and she's here on staff now. Just talking about what is it that makes Pam Pam, and she was just like, Pam has that way of connecting with somebody that she just met and making them feel like they're the most important person ever, and I truly believe that. And so thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you.
You've been here for 22 years. You've seen all the changes. I mean, even just this past or a week ago, the church changing its name to Cross City Church. I think it's an amazing thing. You've seen big changes like that. What are some of the things that you've learned, some of the takeaways you've had in ministry in the time that you've been here?
There's been so much. And actually, I've been at the church for 40 years or more.
Oh, okay.
But I was on staff. I've been on staff for 22 years. And I think that the thing that I've noticed throughout is just the constant faithfulness of our God. In the storms, when things are good, He's constant.
Right. And
I think that that's the one thing. We have wonderful people here. We have amazing leadership here. We have people that love well. We have people that love this church. They want what's best for this church, and we have a staff that loves each other and wants to see this God's church flourish. And so I'm excited. I'm one of those. Well, let me first say that I've watched your other two podcasts, and I'm good 30 years older than the other two guests that you've had, and so and they did a remarkable job. But I feel like they've set the standards very high, and so thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, I love change, and maybe for a lot of people my age, or maybe even people your age, they don't really love change, but I feel like we have to. We have to change. We don't change the most important things, our foundation, which is the Word.
Yeah.
And what we're teaching. We've said that so many times over the last several months. But it's okay to change. We want to do whatever we need to do to draw the most important people in so that we can point them to the cross. And so I'm excited about that.
But and that's a big thing, because I would say, I think that's probably something that we ascribe to, the older generation. They don't want change. They don't want things to change from the way they've had it. But that's true, I'll say, of my generation, whether they want to agree or not. Like the second we try to make them do anything different than what they've been used to. So this isn't, I wouldn't consider this an age thing, and some may disagree with me, but what have you had, what have those conversations been like? Because I do agree, I think we have amazing people here at this church. I think we have a unified staff that makes the important things the main thing. But those are conversations we've had, people that haven't been, as excited with anything. And I'm not just talking about the name change, but like, what do you tell that person, to put them at ease, to get them on the right track?
I don't think you tell them anything.
Okay.
I think you listen to them.
That's good.
I think a lot of our people, anybody, I like to be listened to, and that doesn't mean that I'm always right. I just want to know that you care enough about me to hear my story, hear where I'm coming from, us build a relationship, so that when you tell me the hard things, when you tell me things are going to change, I may not like it, but because I trust you, I'm going to follow you. And so I think our people, of all ages, they just want to feel like they matter, they count, and that their thoughts, that you're going to listen to them. Not listen to them, but you're going to hear them.
Right. And I think that's a huge thing. You talked about trust. We watched that documentary the other day, Would You Be My Neighbor,
gosh,
the
that
Mr.
was
Rogers
so
thing.
good.
And when he's in that scene where he's lobbying for PBS not to be defunded, he talks about, the senator that's up there. He was already read everything, and it's like, I trust you're going to read it. He talks about that trust is one of the first things that a child learns, and I think that continues on through adulthood. Like, trust is a huge thing. And
what I love in that documentary was when Fred Rogers spoke out, he laid the paper aside, and he spoke from his heart, and he was trying to build that trust between him and was it a congressman or senator, whoever he was, senator or whoever he was speaking to. And I think the senator knew he was speaking from a place that had not been spoken from before, which was from the heart. And so
the part that I'd seen that video, if y'all haven't seen that, you need to go check it out. It's like an hour and a half long, and it is totally worth it. But you've probably seen a smaller clip get circulated around where Fred Rogers goes before. What I didn't know until I watched the documentary is he had sat through 2 days worth of that, of just listening to people come up, give their case, and essentially just read what he was already going to read later. And Fred comes up, sets that aside, says, I trust that you're going to read this, and then just comes from his heart. And so I think you're totally right. I work with single adults. I work with college students, and I have a lot of my college students, primarily, that they want to get into ministry. And I have that. I joke with them. It's tongue in cheek about like, oh no, you don't want to do that. Trust me, like it's only because it's a calling that I. But it is something that I think is admirable and honorable. What advice would you give to a young person that's wanting to get into ministry, and even kind of add a second part to that question? Talk to the ladies. Like I've got students of mine that are graduating this year, and they want to be you, in the sense that they want to do women's ministry. They want to help students, whatever it is. What advice do you have for the person that wants to get into ministry?
Well, I remember years and years and years ago, and I'm trying to remember who it was that told me this. It may have been Bill Anderson. He said, "Tell them if they can do anything else, do it." And I don't want to say it was Bill Anderson, but I've
had people tell me that too, though.
Exactly. If you can do anything else, do it. But I think that the one thing that I would tell any young woman is, once we become followers of Christ, we're ministers of the gospel.
That's so good.
And so I have a precious, precious friend, and if I called her name, everybody would probably know who she is, but she actually is a missionary in the arts. And she's a believer. God has called her to full-time ministry.
Yeah.
But it's in the arts. She's a dancer. She's in ballet.
So she's not on a church staff.
She's not on a church staff.
Work with a missions
so
network.
we're all, once we become followers of Christ, we're all in ministry. And so for me, for Isaiah, we just happen to get to do it right here within the walls of the church. But I would say whatever God calls you to, you're as a follower of Christ, as a disciple of Christ, you're in ministry. And I have precious friends that work at Starbucks. And I tell you what, they do a lot more ministry there than sometimes we get to do here. We're surrounded by people who know the Lord. And so we do ministry, but I think we have to be very careful. Even as ministers on staff, it's our responsibility to go out into the marketplace and share with lost people. We become very comfortable with just working with people who already know the Lord. And so, but I would say, first and foremost, just know that you're in full-time ministry, whether it's within the walls of the church or outside of the walls of the church. I would tell them to armor up, because it's the most wonderful place to be, but it's also the hardest place to be, because when you're working, just like any job, there's wonderful things with every job, and then there's bad things that you don't really enjoy with jobs. But working at the church, you see a lot of stuff that you wish you couldn't see. And I tell everyone, and anybody that I've talked to coming on staff here, even if they're coming as an associate, if you can't separate your work from your worship, then you don't need to work on church staff.
And that's been I think that has been probably the hardest thing to do for me, because, when I was saved a little over 5 years ago, I was still working, for Lexus and stuff like that. And like you said, wherever you work, you've got good days and you've got bad days. And I would definitely have bad days, but church was an escape for that. Like, there was nothing about my church life that was bad, in a sense, if you will. Like, when I looked at the staff, when I looked at the pastor, when I looked at the worship team, like, those were all the positives of my church life.
Absolutely.
Now, being here on staff, it has become difficult to separate worship from work, and because you realize that the same sinful people that are out there, believers that are working with you in your jobs, now work with you on the church staff, and it can become very hard to separate that. And that's been, something that I've been trying to make sure I focus on is where having those times of worship. So if it is on a Sunday where I get to sit in on the worship service, really just trying to disconnect, not that I don't do my job, but really having to separate that and let my pastor lead me.
Absolutely.
Let our worship leaders lead me through song. Let any teacher that I may be sitting in on their class for the day teach me God's word. That's been difficult.
Well, and I'll take it a step further. I feel like, and I'm just going to speak about me on this matter. We forget when we're here all week long, we forget we have to prioritize worship.
Right.
And so regardless of what else we have going on, it's so hard when you're on church staff to prioritize getting in that room so that you can have that time. Not that that's the only time we worship. We should be worshiping every single solitary day of our life.
Right.
But it's so important for us on staff to make sure we prioritize and not only encourage our people to get in worship, but we need to get in worship as well. It's vital.
Is there anything, and I didn't even ask you this ahead of time, but how have you done that? Like, how have you prioritized worship as a staff member? For anybody that's listening that is on a church staff, what does that look like for you? How have you prioritized that?
Well, my husband and I, we're really blessed because I don't have as much responsibility on Sunday other than going in, visiting my classes, but we serve in young adults.
Right.
And so, and before when we served in young singles, it was more of a, we're going to worship, come go with us. We sat with them. That became just another arm, another priority of our ministry. And so it's been easier for me than those of our staff that maybe serve in children's or in preschool. And I think that we have to, and I don't know what the answer is. I just know for me, I can't go a week without worship. I just can't do it. And so we prioritized that a long time ago that I was going to get in there. Maybe there needs to be a rotation. I don't know, but I know just the value of being in worship every Sunday for me personally.
That's good. I know that's definitely. I told Ben a few weeks ago that's my big goal for 2019 is worship. Russell's message just drove straight through my heart, just making sure that worship is a priority. Do you have any goals for 2019?
I do have some goals. I don't do New Year's resolution because I never, and then I beat myself up because I didn't do it. But for me, last year was I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear God. Yeah. I wanted to hear from Him, and I learned.
Let me go ahead and just say this, especially if you're listening on our podcast. We've got some workers upstairs, and so we're just gonna roll with that. We're gonna make light of that. And so if we kind of come in and out, you hear the rumbling.
It's not thunder.
Yeah, it's not the place caving in on itself. So
that's funny.
We're here pretty much kind of in a little basement at Campus West, and so. But you were saying.
So last year was hearing Him and positioning myself to hear from Him. That was my goal. And this year, my goal is to trust Him more. And I know that sounds very, hyper spiritual or whatever, but something that I've really wrestled with, and I've shared this with several of our ladies, and I am probably guilty of being too transparent. And so I think it's a good thing. I'm just going to lay this out there because that's one of my things that I would tell young ladies in ministry. Be you, be transparent. Don't try to be anybody else because you're going to end up falling on your face. So this is who I am. But I shared with the ladies at Christmas that, I know God can do anything. He absolutely can. He is all powerful. He's all sovereign. He can do anything. My struggle comes with trusting him.
Right.
Will he do it or will he not do it?
Right.
So just this year, my word is trust. Just trusting him, whether he does what I feel like needs to happen or whether he doesn't, I'm going to trust him with it. So
if there was a book that you've read or you have on your list to read this year, like in kind of that vein of trust, like what are you putting in the girl's hand?
Well, my book that I actually counseled with the girl this week, and I said, I want to give you Discerning the Voice of God.
Okay.
But the book, and it's a little book, and it's just a tiny little book. You can read it like in an hour, and it's called The Red Sea Rules. What God calls you to, he will bring you through.
The Red Sea Rules.
The Red Sea Rules. I think it's Robert P. Morgan is the author. And we'll
double check. We'll put it down in the description for sure.
But basically, whatever God calls you to, he will bring you through.
That's awesome.
And so that's one of those books that I've gone back and read over and over and over again, and it has just spoken so loudly to me. So that would be. Yeah.
That's good. So definitely go grab that book. I'll probably try and read that today if I can.
Grab that.
Pam, last year especially, but the year before that's it's been a tough year for you. So with the loss of both of your parents, people have experienced the loss of their parents. My parents are young, and so like other than one of my grandparents, like everybody's still alive, and it scares me at times because I feel like I'm about to embark on a season of a lot of loss. But we just got through the holidays. Like if you're willing, talk me through what were the holidays like this year, because I was at your mother's funeral and I was just bawling in tears. It was such a beautiful celebration of life, and that it was a life well lived. But what were the holidays like this year? The
one word that I that keeps coming to mind when people ask me about that, surreal. I was blessed to live near my parents in the last several years, but I was even more blessed that in my mother's last days, probably the last few months of her life, she actually came and lived with me. Yeah. And that was such a huge gift. I mean, you don't dream. And I know I'm talking to college students here, but I never dreamed of growing up, living apart from my parents for 37 years, and then, oh boy, I get to move back in with my parents, or they get to move in with me.
Right.
That wasn't on my wish list. And so, but it was actually my husband who, I don't think I've mentioned this, but I am married to the most wonderful man in the whole wide world, and I have to say this, especially since it's going to be out there. But it was him that pushed and said, "We need to bring your mom in with us."
Okay.
And so, I wanted her to come, but I wanted him to be the one that led that because it was going to change our lives for a while. But looking back, that was just the absolute greatest gift to us because we got to lavish her, with love. I got to say all those things that a lot of people don't get to say to their parents before they pass away. That was a huge gift. I've come to know that a lot of the grief process, I feel like for a lot of people, it's not just the absence of their loved one being there, but the regrets that maybe they had because they didn't get to say some things, or maybe their relationship wasn't what they had hoped it would be, or whatever. And so God was very gracious to us in that he gave us those last few months with her. And I got to have those conversations of, Mom, I need to know that you know how much you're loved. And she said, oh, honey, I'm the most blessed person in the whole wide world. I know how much I'm loved. So because of that, I missed her terribly.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would cry when I'm making her cookies, or I cry because I walked in a store and that was the last store we went to together, or something like that. So I did have those moments of sadness that I just missed her so badly. But as a believer, when you know that your parents are with the Lord, there's such joy in knowing that, you know what? I'm here for such a short amount of time.
Right.
I get to spend eternity with them. And so as sad as I was that she wasn't here, there was also just joy in knowing that she was spending her first Christmas with our Savior.
Yeah.
And so that was exciting. That was exciting. Awesome. And also I had a moment of I was crying one day during the holidays, and I have 3 grandchildren, and my little Georgia, she's 5 years old, and I was crying. And she's so cute, and I was crying, and she asked me, Happy, what's wrong? They call me Happy, and I said, baby, I just miss Nani, and she said, but Happy, Jesus is going to come back and get us, and we're all going to go to heaven with him.
That's the sweet.
And I thought, well, you know what, you're exactly right, baby. And so anyway, I just thought, out of the bowels of babes, that how sweet that I was able to hear that from a 5-year-old grandchild.
I was going to say, she's 5 years old. She is the sweetest thing. That's awesome. So you take, just a season like that. One of the things that I admire the most about you is, man, except for the fact that we know each other and that we have those conversations, and I wouldn't know that these are things like you, when it comes to loving on people, when it comes to, I don't want to say have your game face on, but when it comes to loving others like that, you do it so well in light of all the things that, can be difficult. We already talked about just in ministry, but just in life. What is it that keeps you happy? Like you said, it's not a coincidence that that's the name your grandkids have for you, is Happy. Like, what keeps you going in times of loss, in times of struggle, in times of anger? Because I don't handle that well. I usually, if you don't see me for a day, it's probably because I'm trying to deal with something. I've at least gotten good enough to go away. But you seem to handle it so well, and I admire it so much about you. What is it that keeps you going?
Well, I would love to give you a spiritual answer, but I do have those down days. As a matter of fact, my husband could give you a long checklist of times where, I probably am reacting to a situation and not responding like I would like to. He gets it all, and he is so gracious and so encouraging and so precious. And but I thrive. I love people. I absolutely love people.
Yeah.
And so staying at home would be the worst thing that I could possibly do if I was going to be separated from people. I keep saying, the joke around here is, girls that come in say they want to do women's ministry, and I'll meet with them. I say, do you want my job? Because I'm kind of like looking for that next person to pass the torch to. I can't imagine not being able to be with people. And so getting to come and getting those hugs they give me, and I get to give them, and hearing their stories, and just that's what energizes me.
Right.
Yes, I serve an awesome God. I do. But I also get to serve with awesome people who encourage me and pray for me. And I know it's the prayers of the people that have gotten us through.
Right.
We harass Russell all the time, but oh my gosh, what a prayer warrior to have to get to work with. Definitely. Because I know he and Michelle are praying for me. I have a pastor and his wife, Kim, who pray for me. And so I know it's just that, and just knowing there's so much work to be done. I want to be a part of that. It excites me to get to be a part of that. I know I'm not going to get to do this forever, because I want someone 30 years younger than me to come in and breathe new life into this ministry. But I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, it does, and I think it's probably. That's a practical answer, because I think the spiritual answer that's encompassed in is that our God's amazing, and He's going to get us through those things.
Absolutely.
But to know, and hopefully for others to hear that, like, man, if you're a people person in those times of trouble and difficulty, don't pull yourself away. I think there's some of us that probably need, like myself, like I need to get away, because I'm not going to say, or I'm not going to be a loving person in those times. And so I kind of need to get away, get with God and stuff like that, and then I come back. But if you're a people person out there, be around people. Like it doesn't make sense to pull yourself away. That's what you're saying. Like, I love people. That energizes me. And so in those times, it's even almost more important to lean into being around those people that are going to pray for you, love on you, make you laugh. And so it definitely answers my question. It would be ridiculous of me to have this opportunity to talk to you and not talk about events, the way that you put on events. If you've ever, for those listening, if you've ever been to one of the women's events, or if you're a guy and you were ever just there serving, you know that Pam puts on the best events here at the church. What is it about events that you love? Like,
I'm crazy. I thrive in chaos. I just do. I do. I love being given something. I get so much teasing up here because honestly, I was running late this morning because I couldn't find my pants. I just had my pants, but I couldn't find my pants. And so I lose everything. I am a last minute planner. I am a detail person, but typically those details are anything that can be left to the last minute is going to be left to the last minute. Now, it will not affect you. It will only affect me. I'll be up all night. I'll take care of you. But I just love a party. I love to have fun. I'm labeled as the fun person up here on staff as far as, Pam, everything can't be fun, but I want everything to be fun.
Right.
And so, but I just love it. I love a reason to get together and celebrate. Again, people. I love being with people. I love making people smile. I just love planning these events that we get to have. And so I typically volunteer for a lot more around here than I probably should. But if it's a party, I want to be a part of it. So
well, and I'm not trying to just build you up because you're on, but I mean, our women's events are probably, I would say, the most successful events. Like once you look into, money, time, effort, who actually attends, the outreach of people that aren't even a part of this church that attend these events, I would say, and I think most would agree, our women's events are probably the most successful events that we have here.
We have an incredible team, too.
Yes,
I have an incredible
definitely.
team of women that have been faithful, been doing this with me for 22 years. I mean, Dana Goyer, Rebecca Lamar, my mom. That was one of the hardest things at Christmas. I didn't have my mom to sell tickets. And so I had to handle the money, which is really scary when you think that. So I've had a few people that have actually stepped up and said, I'll take care of your ticket sales. Done. You're hired.
Yes,
Next event is yours. I am not, IT. That is not my world. Fortunately, I'm married to an IT man. But it's funny because I just make sure that I surround myself with a great team that can do everything. I can do this much. I surround myself with some really talented, incredible people that,
that's smart.
That can do it all.
So this last Christmas dinner, though, was different for a number of reasons. So you've had some big names come through here. I mean, tell us a couple of the ladies that you've had.
We've
be
had
speakers.
Priscilla Shirer.
Okay.
We've had Lisa Turkhurst. We had. Now you're going to put me on the spot. Let's see, who else have we had? We have had one time we had Beth Moore. That was years and years and years ago. We actually did have Beth Moore. Gosh.
Well, the point I'm getting at is like, but this past one was special because you were actually our speaker
at
the ladies' dinner.
I was.
Just briefly, I mean, talk to me about like how you got to that point, because it was definitely, I mean, it was a prayer-filled thing. We were praying for you through that.
Yes.
How did you get to the realization that you needed to do that? Because that's, I mean, unless I'm wrong, like that is not your wheelhouse.
No.
That is not your comfort zone.
No.
But what was that process like? Just accepting that God was asking you to do this, and then actually doing it. What was that like?
Well, I have to go back to when John first came on staff here. I think that he told me early on, he said, I really would like to see you speak to our ladies. And I told him then, I said, you know what, John, I've asked the Lord not to ask me to do that. I can get up. It does not bother me at all to get up. Like, I'm more nervous doing this today than I am getting up in front of 1,000 women. If I can be funny, or if I could just, if I can be funny. But to get up and teach God's word, that's a whole different That's a whole different responsibility, And so John, I actually went through SALT, which is what he called the training, teacher training early on. And came out of that saying, you know what, that's backfired. Because that even, you thought that would give me confidence, and what that did was that raised that level of accountability and everything that makes me even more nervous. I'm still asking the Lord not to ask me to speak. And so last year, going back to, Lord, I just want to hear from you. And so with all that was going on with Mom, and I didn't have a speaker, and I kept saying, I had probably about 8 weeks out, I had 2 inboxes with contracts in them from 2 different speakers. And I told John, I said, you know what, this is crazy. I said, when I get ready to sign a contract, I get sick to my stomach.
Really?
But the thought of me speaking makes me even more sick to my stomach. So, but I felt like the Lord was telling me, it's your time. This is your time. I have something for you to say. And so, going back to you had asked me what I would tell young women that wanted to go into ministry, be yourself. You got to be yourself.
Yeah.
And I kept wrestling with, I can't be a Charlotte Hughes.
Yeah.
I can't be a Karen May. Can't be a Sharon Smith. All these amazing speakers
Right.
and teachers. And I looked at the list of names of all the women we have brought in the past, which even though I can't recall all their names right now, we've had some incredible speakers
Yeah.
here. And so I thought I could never live up to the standard that our women have for our speakers. And the Lord very clearly spoke to me. And he said, you're going to do this.
Okay.
I've got a word for you. And you're going to be totally transparent. You're going to be you.
Yeah.
And so with much fear and trembling, I said yes. And I wouldn't put my name in print because I knew if I did, I would have to follow through.
Right.
And if it wasn't in print, I could back out at the last minute if I wanted to hire somebody else. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. And what was really cool, Michelle and Russell and John, several of you, came in the green room that night and you prayed over me. And the last thing John said to me when he walked out, he said, you be you. I want you to be you.
That's awesome.
So, which was like, oh my gosh, because he was also the same pastor that said, Pam, you can touch that line, but don't you cross that line, because again, I'm very transparent. And so, anyway, that night I was left alone in the green room after everybody had prayed for me and left, and I was pacing. And honestly, Isaiah, I thought I was going to throw up.
Well, the funny thing is before that, like still kind of in the 2 days before this thing, you're still making the centerpieces. You're still over there. And literally, I mean, it's 15 minutes before the event starts, and you're still doing things. And I'm looking at you like, okay, this isn't natural Pam event planning. She's like, she's trying to just keep her mind occupied and stay busy.
I was. Absolutely, I was. And so there was not one thing that I needed to do because my women had taken care of everything. They had taken care of me that day, but I was just trying to keep my mind occupied.
Yeah.
And so anyway, but I was back there thinking, because we were at the city, and so Kent's got several little costumes back there that maybe Heather or someone has worn. I thought, okay, I could put a costume on. I think I'd feel more comfortable. But what was so cool about that night, after it was all said and done, once I got up there, it was like total peace just came over me. Did I say everything I wanted to say that I'd planned to say? No. Did I there was a moment that I paused that I was like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to say next. But there was still complete peace because I knew I was being prayed for. I had prayed so hard, Lord, speak through me. Don't let me say anything that's not of you. And so, but at the end of the night, when it was all said and done, and this wasn't a planned thing, this was not my thought process when I did this, but we had Tara O'Shields up on the stage, who was a nervous wreck. She had never gotten up and been the MC for the evening before. We had 3 of our girls singing who had been the background for worship, but had never stepped out and led in worship before.
It was Hannah, Emily, and
Melissa Spivey.
Yeah, Melissa. That was awesome to see them up
So
there.
at the end of the night, I'm going, oh my gosh, God, you asked every one of us to step out of that comfort zone, because I had always done what Tara did that night.
Right.
And then here I was speaking. I had never really stepped out on the stage to speak before. And it was really, really, really a powerful evening. I've had so many women come up, encourage me, thanking me for my transparency. That's what they saw.
Right, because you don't get that from a lot of speakers, and it's not to say anything.
It wasn't polished at all.
But I mean, these ladies and just any other communicator that's brought in, they've got their thing that you asked to bring them in, and it starts to become packaged at some point. And I'm sure that's probably against their preference even, but that is where you excel. And on that night, it definitely showed, and you've seen it in the response from our ladies.
Thank you.
And so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just so thankful for you and for the ministry that you do here. The day when that day comes that somebody does take your spot, those are going to be huge shoes to fill, and so we'll be in prayer for that person, because it's going to be a big thing.
Well, the cool thing to that is I'm gonna walk right along with her,
right?
Unless I'm dead, I'm gonna walk right beside her. I'm gonna be her biggest fan, just like Brother Jimmy and Brother Bill have done here. They have cheered John on from day one. I mean, look at the rich legacy this church has.
It was so cool to see Pastor Jimmy here.
Oh my gosh,
the other
that
day.
was always. He is our pastor's big. Well, I think I'm John's biggest fan, But Brother Jimmy and Brother Bill, I mean, they have always been John's biggest fan. And I don't know, it's just been an amazing journey. A privilege for me to be a part of that.
Well, it's been a privilege to be a part of what you've been a part of as well.
Well, thank you.
Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that as much as I did. Pam truly is one of a kind, and I'm so thankful that we got to talk to her and hear her heart just a bit. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, and be on the lookout for next week's episode where I get to talk with my friend, Michael Upchurch, about all the craziness that he's got going on in his life, being a new dad, and launching a satellite church. Last thing I want to do is leave you with the same question that I asked Pam. What keeps you going? Take it as you will, apply it to your context, but really ask yourself, what is it that keeps you going? We'll see y'all next week.